Hi, and welcome to episode 129 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but I'm also known as Heartland Knits on places like Ravelry and Instagram. And today is Sunday, December 13th, 2015. I was all set to record in front of the Christmas tree today. I put it up yesterday and I thought, I can record in front of there. I always like to do at least one podcast there. And we have the strangest weather for the middle of December here in the north. We had thunderstorms overnight. It just rained a ton, which I am not complaining about because if that had come down as snow, it would have been inches and inches of snow, and I would so much rather have rain. But it is so foggy out. I can't even really see the house across the street. So that room is set up like how the lights are. I thought it would be fine if I had the natural light from the window. There is no light from the window this week. So instead of trying to fuss and try to make it, work, I just came in here in my regular spot and figure I have next week to do one in front of the Christmas tree. But that's also why I have my Reeves frame wheel is sitting in the background here, because that usually sits where the Christmas tree is now. So anyway, let's get on to the knitting, shall we? I have just a little bit to show you what's on my needles. It's something that you have seen before. And I picked this back up. My wrist is still giving me some problems. I've been knitting it kind of combination with, English style with my right hand, but I'm much slower, and then I get sort of, this is never going to get done, and I switch it over to my left hand, and I knit like that a little bit. So anyway, this is my Astor, which is a Herbert Niebling design, and I am doing this edging, this kind of mesh sort of edging. The last time you saw this was a couple of weeks ago, and I was crocheting it off, kind of casting off, but with a crochet method. And I got about halfway across. This is going to be sort of a crescent-ish, a little bit over half size shawl. And I got about halfway, and I kind of pulled it, to see how big it would be. And it was, when I was doing it, it was kind of right at the tips of those sort of petals. And I just looked at it, and I just thought, it would have looked fine if kind of I was at the end of my yarn. But I had, a fair bit of yarn left, and thought, well, I should just really keep going and really make it, I was like, I wanted to get it done. And so I think I was just trying to make it done. But I knew I would probably, if I just ended it right there, I would probably come to regret it. So I ended up putting all those stitches back on the needle. And then this kind of rested that week where I was resting my hand. And then I picked it up late this week and started going on it again. Just kind of doing this mesh, extending that out a little bit. And I really like how it looks. I think it's going to make it kind of have a built-in, almost kind of frilly kind of border. And then I will do a crochet cast off again. So I'm going to do a few more repeats of that. I have this much yarn left now, and the yarn for this is Madeline Tosh lace in the tart color. So I can't remember how many grams I had left, and I haven't been able to weigh it because I just use a postal scale when I'm going to weigh my yarn, and it needs a new battery. And every time I go to the grocery store or Target or something, I always forget to get a battery for it. And then I'm sitting there like at night, Friday night I was knitting this and I thought, oh, I should weigh that yarn. After 2 rows just to see, how much it used, and thought, oh, the scale isn't, and then I didn't want to go out, get out of my pajamas and go out to a store and get a battery. So I'm not sure, but just kind of looking at it, I can see it going down, but it's still got a ways to go. I think I can do a few repeats. And like I said, I've been sort of doing this combination with different hands. When I kind of switched and started using the throwing it with the yarn in my right hand, it is I do have a looser tension. But with this sort of mesh, I don't think it really matters. It'll just kind of make it stretch a little bit more. And even going back and forth between one hand and the other, I don't think it'll really matter that much. So really, this is kind of my main thing that I have on the needles. I still have the hand-to-hand cardigan, the big blue sweater. It's still sitting next to my chair, and honestly, I would really like to get that off of the needles before the end of the year. I have a lot of things started, a lot of things that I started in August, sweaters started, and it doesn't matter to me. I don't need to sort of clean off all my needles, at the end of the year. But that sweater is kind of one thing that I don't want to follow me into the new year. So there's about 3 weeks, and I kind of figure I have about 3 skeins worth of yarn left. So I am going to try to just start knitting on that a little bit and just kind of see how it goes. And even if I start, using my right hand to knit that, it's just kind of all garter. I'm at the waist, so it has kind of the lower half to do, and then there's just like an I-cord around the whole perimeter. But I figure if I use my right hand and the gauge is different, it won't matter so much sort of, in that area, over my hips, because if it's a little bit looser over that, it might be fine. I usually, block it a little bit bigger, in that section anyway, so we will see. So for off the needles, I have something newly off the needles, and I also thought I will just quick tell you about this sweater. This is a sweater that I knit early in the fall. This is the Garland Necklace Yoke Sweater by Meg Swanson, and I used unspun Icelandic single strand in the charcoal and then the kind of rose color. And I put this on this morning, and I thought, well, I should kind of wear it for the podcast, because I know there are people who really kind of like to hear kind of, I'll show something when it's newly finished, and then, you kind of never see it again. So I just wanted to let you know that I love this sweater. It is one of my favorites. I have been wearing it every week, almost every day, because it's just kind of the perfect weight. And we're having this sort of nice, I like it, kind of warm start to December, the end of November and December. So it's like just the right kind of weight. It's a single strand of the Icelandic. The sweater I showed last week was a double strand, so I can wear that when it's really like in the 20s. But even this, like I've worn it when it's been in the 30s, close to like 32, 30, and I have been completely warm, and it's so lightweight you don't feel like you have hardly like a sweater on even. So I am very, very pleased with how the whole thing came out. But I have a new project, and it's different. It's I showed the yarn last week and the week before that, and told you that I had a gift to knit for somebody, and I have to give it away on Tuesday. So I showed you that I started knitting a hat last week out of the blue Shibui Maai yarn, which is an alpaca merino blend. So I was kind of just on the ribbing last week, and I was loving knitting with it. It's a kind of a crochet chain structure of the yarn, and it's just really nice to knit with. And so I was just doing the ribbing, and that was working out fine. And then the hat I was doing was Alana Daco's The Forest Floor hat, which has kind of a cable design element in it. And I started doing those cables. And there was something about this sort of texture of the yarn, because it has that crochet, chain, and the kind of darkish blue color, and the patterning just was not showing up. I mean, it would have still been a really nice, soft, warm hat, but it just didn't have, you couldn't see the patterning really in it. So I thought about it and thought, no, I would feel better as it's a gift. I wanted to have something I really, really, liked. So I went and I pulled that out, and I went back to my kind of original plan to do fingerless mitts. And so I finished those up. So I have 2 fingerless mitts. And I also thought, a hat is something that somebody who's not a knitter, can buy, anywhere at any store. But fingerless mitts are a little bit more, harder to find, a hand knit. So the pattern I used for these was an Ann Hansen pattern called the Fallberry Mitts, and they were from a knitty back, I think, 2011. I've knit this pattern before for gifts, and I always like how they turn out. This yarn, after I pulled out the hat and started making the mitts, I was so happy because it's so soft. You really need to have it sort of right next to your skin. So anyway, it's a pretty, straightforward mitt pattern. I did do kind of what I really like to do this. It's the double start or Latvian cast on, and then this sewn bind off from Joyce Williams' book that kind of completely matches it. And I like these a lot to use for a gift because they do still need to be blocked. I have to do that as soon as I finish recording because I want them to be dry on Tuesday. But it has like a nice kind of texture pattern, but it's also basically ribbing. So there's a column of purl stitches, between the pattern, and so that makes them nice and stretchy, and because I know kind of the size of my hands, but when you're giving something as a gift, you want to make sure that it fits nicely. So that is my Off the Needles. These are the Fallberry Mitts by Ann Hansen from Knitty, and I really loved working with the yarn a lot. So in spinning, I also finished some spinning last week. Unfortunately, I don't have it to show you. I don't even have a picture of it to show you. I showed the fiber kind of in progress. It was a braid that was dyed by a friend of mine a couple of years ago, kind of like a celadon green and teal and dark green. And I was spinning a 3-ply, and I had a couple bobbins spun, and then last week I quickly spun the 3rd bobbin and then plied it together and actually wrapped it up and sent it out in the mail to my friend who had dyed the fiber. She was just having like a really bad week. Things, awful things were happening, and then it was her birthday at the end of the week, and I thought, she dyed this for me. I had the fun of spinning it, so I sent it off. It ended up to be 402 yards. It was about the size of a DK weight. I was thinking it was going to be heavier than that. It it wasn't. It was thinner than I was expecting it to be, but it was a BFL silk blend, and it was 6 ounces was the 400 yards. So I just did it so quickly. I kind of, wrapped it up and sent it, and was driving home from the post office and thought, I didn't even take a picture. Um, so then I wasn't thinking that I was going to start a new spinning project. So I didn't think I was going to start something new. And then I have been thinking about this for a while, and I don't know if it will get done, maybe, but I think it was at least a year ago, because I know I bought the fiber the last time I went to Madrona, which was 2014, I guess, yeah. Um, but I bought some fiber, and I was um, spindling it with a supported spindle. I bought kind of 2 ounces of cashmere and then matching ounce of tussa silk. And I spun up the tussa silk on my wheel a while ago. It's just been sitting on my Lazy Kate like this. And it's this really pretty kind of aqua teal color. And the cashmere is like matching. And I was supported spindling it, which is fine. It is not my favorite kind of spindling. I kind of bought it. It was like the group of friends I was with. Sort of that was the thing. Everybody got a supported spindle, and I was spindling some of this stuff, and it was really fun to have. And it's a beautiful, beautiful spindlewood spindle. But I don't. It's kind of just been sitting there because it's just not my favorite thing. If I'm going to spindle, I would prefer to drop spindle. So I had just the 2 ounces of fiber. I had at least like wound off a little bit, at least once, I think twice, off of that supported spindle, and I can't find the little, single that I wound off of there, which I have to look for longer. But I thought, instead of just kind of leaving that hanging, maybe I could spin up this little bit. Was like an ounce and a half of fiber. Maybe I could finish that up by the end of the year. So I put that on my Joy, and I've been spinning a little bit of that all the time, every night. And we'll see if I get done, and then, apply it with this. And we'll see. If it doesn't get done, it's not that big of a deal, but I just thought I would, I'm in this habit now of spinning every night, and I just kind of want to stay in that habit. So then for Imagine Knitting, I have a new pattern that I wanted to tell you about. This was a pattern that was sent to me as a gift by a really kind viewer. Thank you so much. It's a pattern that I saw somebody on my Instagram was knitting. And I had never seen them before, and I, commented and said, what pattern is that? And she told me, and the designer's name. And I went over and just put it in my queue right away, because otherwise I would forget about it. And, she looked, and I think I was probably in my wish list. I probably checked the wish list box, and she pulled it off of there and sent me the pattern. And these are called the Papilio mittens. They have these, it's a stranded mitten with these butterflies. And this is by, the designer is Jenny Alderbrandt, and she is Jenny Penny on Ravelry. So I am really looking forward to starting those as a new project. I'm not sure when, but I have to find kind of the perfect yarn for it. use like a fingering weight yarn. They're like a nice like tight mitten gauge like I like. She is from Sweden, so I'm figuring she knows cold weather. But she has a ton of really, really pretty stranded mitten and sock patterns. So if you like that kind of thing, I do recommend go over and check out her on Ravelry. Some really, really pretty things. I think these were just kind of recently published, or maybe it was just updated in English. They are translated from Sweden, so some of her patterns just say they're in Swedish, and then some have the English translation. Um, but they're all charted and everything. So there are those that I am hoping I like to do kind of a special project like around Christmas between, a smallish thing that I can like sort of finish, right around, Christmas and, before the end of the year. And so those mittens might be something. I know I've done kind of shawls, like one skein of sock yarn kind of shawls. So I'm not sure, but those mittens are really pretty. I kind of looked at my stash and was like, wasn't sure, I didn't have like an immediate, like I have to knit it out of those. So, but I did want to do a pair of mittens kind of in it like a charcoal and cream. So maybe I will do those that would be really pretty, or I don't know. We'll see. But then for show and tell, I don't have anything kind of new that I have to show you, but I did want to show off a project that a friend of mine knit. I'm not even sure if she watches the podcast, but she's a really great knitter and she loves knitting with color. And this group of friends and I were like, kind of saw this finished project that she had done recently, and I just think it's fabulous, and I wanted to show it to all of you, especially because I know there are so many people doing the kind of mitered square blankets and collecting the mini skeins, so many on Instagram, and there's a lot of podcasters who do them. I am not starting one. I can really appreciate the joy that people get from making them, and having the yarn from different people that they swap with, and all of those things. I totally get it, and they're beautiful, and people like get great joy out of doing them. And so that's what this is a mitered square blanket, but she did hers just a little bit different, and I just really love how she did it. So most people's that I have seen kind of do the kind of patchwork where it's just all different like sock yarn mini skeins that they've gotten from people, and she did swaps with people, but I think most of these are koigu, but she was in swaps, and instead of just kind of doing them sort of patchwork hodgepodge kind of style, she collected them into color families and did them. I hope I'm there. I hope that will show up, and did them that way, which I just think is so beautiful. And then did kind of sashing like you would for a quilt, in that like bright contrasty color. And so she did this as a baby quilt for a gift for friends, and I just loved it. She starts it in the middle like some other ones I've seen people doing, where it's kind of like a four patch and then it has radiating lines out, which I love the look of that. But I thought that was just such a like a different take on almost a cross between those sort of watercolor quilts. I don't know if you've seen them, where they have like the little squares of of different printed fabric, and they sort of gradiate, across. I've always loved those quilts when I've gone to quilt shows. But anyway, I just wanted to show that off, and because I just was really taken with it. As much as I love it, it's I cannot commit to a project like that. But I really love it, and so anyway, I wanted to show that off. So that is all that I have for you this week. I hope to record next week with the Christmas tree behind me, and hopefully that red shawl will be done, and we'll see what else happens. And I'm going to try to work on the blue sweater a little bit. If it starts hurting my hand, I'll probably just give up and put it down and move on. I hope all of you have a really great week next week. And if you're knitting Christmas presents, may your fingers fly and, get them finished up quickly. And until I see you next week, hopefully in front of the Christmas tree, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.